Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Cedric Cornbread Maxwell. Kind sir.
All right.
Take a seat right here.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So Max, I get to hog the fun for a while. I'm gonna ask you some questions for about 20 minutes. Then these guys get to ask a couple of questions. But first, let's talk a little bit about your career insofar as where it is now. Because what fascinates me about your career, the many things, is that you had one heck of an NBA career, but there's an entire generation of fans who only know you as the media guy. When did that start to happen, and what was that adjustment like for you?
Well, it was pretty easy. I mean, my mom always said I had the gift of the gab. So, what I did was eventually the Celtics traded me away. I went to the Clippers, played with the Houston Rockets my last year, and the Celtics wanted to bring me back to the organization. So I came to an event where the Boston Celtics were actually closing the Boston Garden for the last time. So Red Auerbach, and at that time, had traded me away, and the general manager for the Celtics said, what we want to bring you back into the organization. So I was like, oh, that sounds great. He said, well, you're going to have to go apologize to Red Auerbach. I was like, damn, he traded me. He traded me. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I went to Washington, D.C. Red Auerbach, the legend. I go into his house, just as nervous as I've ever been. I mean, any kind of basketball game. And Red takes me in the back, and he puts his arm on my shoulder, and he said, when you're young, he said, you make mistakes. And then the next words he said to me, I will always remember. He said, I forgive you. You forgive me? I was like, this guy traded me away. So to go to the Celtics and be there to be a voice of the Celtics has been really interesting. To watch Paul Pierce grow, to watch Kevin Garnett, to watch the Celtics win another championship, to see how they unfolded this year. So when people see me and talk to me, normally, especially on the train in Boston, it's a lot of fun. Now people know me even more. Like, I think it was 2 years ago, ESPN did 30 for 30, and it was the Celtics-Lakers rivalry, and I was blown up in the middle of that. And that was the first time some of my younger kids actually knew that I had played basketball. Like, damn, Dad, you were pretty good. So it was those things happen, and because of that, it was even this year. It was Jason Tatum, our great young Celtic player. I used to talk to him a lot, and before one of the games, he just came out and he was so excited. He started calling me, hey, Cornbread. I was like, what is wrong with you, man? What's wrong? He said, man, I watched you on 30 for 30. You were a bad man. So even with the younger players now, they get an opportunity to see, you as a basketball player by things that you did later on and not identifying some of the things you did or used to do.
That's a fascinating answer, because you're right. We've reached a point in the league where Jason Tatum has never been alive before YouTube. Like, he only knows YouTube world. Yeah. And so his generation, that entire new generation of fans, is getting to know you that way. That's really fascinating.
Well, it really is. I mean, it's even one of the things I said last year. We had a lot of fun last year with Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce I was the last Celtic, actually, to have my jersey retired before last year. And that was the one thing I could always hold over Paul Pierce. I went to him one day, I said, you're a pretty good player. You're really good. He said, yeah, I know I'm good. I said, but they haven't retired your jersey with the Celtics. And he said, my jersey is going to be retired. So last year that they retired this jersey, it was a lot of fun, even to the point where Paul Pierce kicked at me, and I thought it was really funny. The reporter asked him, he said, Paul, so you've been with the Celtics. When did you think you were going to get your jersey retired? He said, When Cedric Maxwell got his retired, I knew I was getting mine retired. So even then, Paul Pierce was picking at me.
I want to go all the way back to Kinston, North Carolina, where you grew up. We'll talk about how fantastic that high school is for creating NBA players.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk about your early days, when you realized that basketball for Cedric Maxwell was different than basketball for pretty much everyone else on your team. When did that happen?
Well, it was really hard to say because my junior year, I went out for the basketball team in high school, and I got cut from the team. I didn't make the team. And I was about 6'3 and a half, and you know, I thought I was a pretty good player. My mom even called the coach and said, "Why'd you cut him? I watch him in the backyard. He's pretty good."
Yeah.
And but I went back, and I actually wasn't going to go out for the team. But over the summer, between my summer of my junior year and my senior year, I grew like 4 inches. So I came back, I was 6'7 and a half.
Wow.
Over the summer.
That's a good summer.
Yeah, and the coach asked me, he said, "You coming back out for the team?" I said, "Of course not. I'm not coming, so you can cut me again." So that was really funny. So, but I didn't really realize my potential about playing the game. I knew I was a pretty good player, but not until I started playing against other players in other cities.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned a little bit about the pedigree of that high school. I mean, these names, Jerry Stackhouse, Ingram, I mean, you had so many dudes. In fact, ESPN, just in the last 12 months, have called Kinston High School America's basketball haven. 1 out of every 100 dudes goes to the NBA. So my question for you is, can you get me some of that water for my kids?
Well, Kinston does have that. They call it pure artesian well water. That's what Kinston. But Kinston had this amazing story that they've done. There's only been one nuclear bomb that has been dropped in the United States, and it was dropped 10 miles from Kinston by accident during the 1961. There was a plane that was flying over Kinston. They have a Air Force base called Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, which is about 25 miles away. Early in the morning, one of the B-52 bombers, one of the wings falls off. The plane starts to crash. 2 bombs come out of the bomb bay. The parachute starts. The second one, it goes supersonic, hits the ground, and doesn't explode. It was 10 times stronger than the bomb on Hiroshima. They did research on this later on. The government kind of had it under wraps. There is still plutonium, which is in the groundwater of that whole area. So I'm not saying that we're mutants in Kinston, but there might be a possibility that we have that mutant water which has made these players, that we've had 5 or 6 NBA players from our high school who have played in the NBA for the last 25, 30 years.
It's incredible. I mean, I just watched Infinity Wars with my kids. Maybe that's what we're headed for right now. No, after high school, with your superhero powers from the plutonium, you head to UNC Charlotte and have one of the great runs in that school where you go to the Final Four, 77, lose to that legendary Marquette team in the Final Four.
They cheated us.
Of course they did.
Cheated us, but we'll leave that for another time. Yeah, it was pretty fascinating to go to Charlotte, to go to a smaller school, to be in North Carolina, and then you have Chapel Hill, and you have Duke, and you have Wake Forest, you have all these major ACC schools. And for us to get to the Final Four, my senior year was incredible. Yeah. But the year before, we had gone to the NIT and played, and that is when I really felt like I could play with anybody in the country because I had a chance to develop at a smaller school. Yeah. We won a lot of games. We went to the Final Four. In the Final Four, the team that we beat to go to the Final Four was Michigan. And Michigan was pretty good there. They were the #1 team in the country that year. And on our way to beating Michigan, we beat Syracuse. We beat Syracuse by like 25 points. And Syracuse, their assistant coach was Rick Pitino. So I saw these people that they have just kind of filtered in my life, and I've got a chance to see them by playing at UNC Charlotte and then eventually getting to the Celtics.
I love that. Now, your draft, we always think about those incredible Celtic teams that won titles, that you won titles with, but your draft was the precursor to that. You got to be there and be one of the initial foundation blocks. Will you tell me what those early years were like, knowing that the bruises that you were taking then were just a couple of building blocks away from being something special?
Well, I knew I played with great players. My first year, I played with 6 guys who were going to be Hall of Famers. Was John Havlicek was one of them, JoJo White, who just passed away, Dave Cowens, Dave Bing. These guys were older players, and I played with them my first year. So I got the chance to experience, what they knew, but they were older players. So, they got old overnight, and then we started getting beat. And then 2 years later, we really got beat the next year, but then we drafted this kid named Larry Bird.
Yeah.
And I just remember doing that. I was ignorant to the fact of watching this kid, Larry Bird. I'm always, very ignorant about basketball sometimes and thinking that, maybe it was only a game of people for color, wow. And I remember watching Larry Bird come in, and I'd averaged like 19 points a game that year. And I'm sitting there as he walks into the building. I'm sitting over there on the podium. I'm the big shot because, I'd scored all the points that year. So when Larry walks in, I give him the slow clap.
Did you?
Slow clap. I'm like, pop, pop. Great white hope. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. So I get a chance to play Larry, so I'm the first guy playing against him. I step on the court, and about 15 feet away, I got my hands down. He knocks down a shot. Okay. Knocks down another shot. Now I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting closer and closer. The closer I get, the further he started knocking down shots. And I remember going to the first African-American player I could see who was after practice. I said, damn, that white boy can play. So I was thinking in my mind, like, what a great player. And to play with him was absolutely amazing. And then to get Robert Parrish, to get Kevin McHale, play with Nate Archibald. I played with guys who were, some of the best players ever to play the game, and it was amazing to be in that thing. People talk right now about all these super teams. ESPN did something today, said, well, can you win? Is it fair anymore to have a super team? I said, that's what the Celtics were.
Yeah.
That's what the Lakers were. That's what Philly were. These were super teams to play against Magic and Worthy and Kareem, Byron Scott, and, all those guys who were there. Those were super teams, along with the Celtics. And then you have Moses Malone and Dr. J teaming together, Andrew Toney, Maurice Cheek. So you had super teams that played during that era, and people are making a big deal of it right now about these super teams. There were super teams during the 80s.
There were, and you guys met every year.
Then you say Detroit. And
that's true.
Throw Detroit in the mix, yes.
81 and 84, special beyond comprehension. I want to talk about both of them in a moment, but I really want to talk about the way that you were able to get into the heads of no one talked better than Max. You played and you talked.
That's true.
Yeah, it's very true.
That's why I'm a good broadcaster.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Your mom knew it.
Yeah.
What was it about talking junk to Worthy and Rambis that was more fun than talking junk to anyone else?
Well, I think because, the way I played the game, mine was trying to get in somebody's head.
Yeah. I
didn't think that I was the fastest, the biggest, the quickest, but I felt that my brain was going to separate me from the next guy. First thing I do, I always talk to a guy. I said, let me tell you why you're not going to beat me today, because you're not smarter than I am. And I was just had that kind of arrogance about me. And I think because of that, one of the stories I loved it, was Pat Riley was standing beside me one day, and we were playing against the Lakers. And I had 3 guys who were on the Lakers bench who were screaming and yelling at me, guys who hadn't even played in the game. And I'm like, so Pat Riley, the ball goes out of bounds. I'm taking it out. Pat's standing beside me. The referee's about to give me the ball. And I said, hold on a minute. The referee kind of looked at me. What do you mean? I said, Pat. Now I tapped Pat on the shoulder. I said, Pat, do me a favor. Put one of those guys in down there that's screaming and yelling at me. He said, you go in the game. So this guy goes in the game. He guards me. I score about 10 points. And now he's walking back off the court. I said, the next time people are out here working, maybe you should just shut up and know your role. So those were things I do remember about actually talking to players and being that aggressive.
81 and 84, very different championships. 81, you're the MVP of the series. But 84, you tell famously against the Lakers, you tell your team, climb on my back. How do you separate those two titles in your head? Does one mean something different than the other to you?
Well, one meant, the 81 championship meant more because that was actually my first championship. That was Larry's first championship, Kevin, Robert, all those guys together. So that was incredible. For me to be the finals MVP is really unique in a way because they always say the only finals MVP who isn't here in the Hall of Fame is me. And I always laugh about that. I think it's great. I love this story. And so when I say that, it was this year, it was a couple of years ago, Kendrick Perkins was playing with OKC. And Durant and Westbrook were in there. So I walk in their locker room after the game and I said, Perk, you owe me some money. And Durant and Westbrook, they sit there and they look back and they go, oh. And then Perkins said to me real loud in front of the whole room, he said, I don't care if you were the finals MVP. And they both looked at me like, who is this? who is he? So those things, to be a finals MVP is absolutely the best award you can get in basketball because that means you probably made a difference in winning the championship and solidifying that championship. 84, we beat the Lakers. One of my happiest moments because I was able to, I always say like slap Magic across the face or, Kareem or whoever it was. And it was one of those things where I just felt that I was a finals MVP. We had the 7th game in Boston, in the Boston Garden, 9 o'clock at night. Everybody was watching the game. So it was time to put your big boy pants on and somebody to step up, and I felt like I had the ability to step up.
One of my favorite games of all time was that Game 7. It was just incredible. Now, here's the part that I told you was coming. You will get a chance to ask Cedric Maxwell, some of you will get a chance to ask a question. So after this next question, I'm going to ask for volunteers. You can raise your hand. One of the great Hoop Hall staffers will select a handful of you and put you in a line to our right, your left. So start thinking about what I haven't asked Max that you want to ask. So we talked a little bit about the trade that Red forgave you for some reason.
Yeah.
What was, because, your legacy, you were a Boston Celtic. And I remember watching my uncles learn of your trade and the reaction that they had. So I'm wondering how a young Cedric Maxwell learned of the trade. How did you take it? Where were you? And I'd love to know that story.
Well, I knew I was going to get traded. There was this kid named Kevin McHale that started after I did. And, he solidified that position. So it was the point where they were going to make a trade. I ended up finding the information out. I was looking at Sporting News magazine and found out that I got traded that way. So there wasn't the whole thing now where you had ESPN, it comes on immediately. You got that information in completely different ways. So that's how I found out I got traded. And to go to the Clippers, and I always remember I said that year I got booed in every arena in the entire NBA except when I came back to Boston. Because when I got traded to the Clippers, all the Laker fans were there, and oh my God, I got ridiculed, I got booed. We don't want you in LA, you suck. It was on and on and on. So it was really a unique process.
I bet it was. Do you have a question for Cedric Maxwell? Raise your hand right now, and the great Hoop Hall staffers will come around and recognize a handful of you. I see some hands popping up. I love that, but I still have 2 questions. Okay. To wrap up with the Rockets, now I'm big in sort of symmetry and poetry. I like trying to That seemed incredibly appropriate for you. If you're gonna wrap up anywhere, to play a year with Houston, that team at that time seemed like a great fit. How much did fit play into that for you?
Well, Bill Fitch was the coach who had been my coach with the Celtics. And the thing that he did, I got traded to the Clippers. And then by doing that, it was just really funny that I got a chance to play with Hakeem Olajuwon. And I always remember the one thing that Bill told me, Bill Fitch, it was one of the games, and he says to me before the game, he says, or during the game, I was like in my 11th or 12th year. I'd been on the bench the whole time, and Olajuwon was playing. Olajuwon turned out to be the best player I ever played with because, he, and no offense to Larry Bird, before somebody says something crazy, Olajuwon was the best player I ever played with because he dominated both ends of the floor like nobody ever in our business. I played a game with him where he had 49 points, 22 rebounds, 8 block shots, 8 assists, and that was in a playoff game. So those were things I look at and going to me to finish off. But we were playing one game, and Hakeem Olajuwon was red hot, and it was late in the game, and Bill Fish says to me, he says, "It's only like a minute to go." And I'm ice cold. He says, "Go in there and get Hakeem before he gets hurt." I said, "Him get hurt?" This man killed a tiger. There was no way that he was, and I always told the coach, I told him the next day, I said, "Man," I said, "I really was kind of teed off what you said." He said, "Well, I didn't mean anything." I said, "But how did it sound if you're telling a 12-year veteran to go in and get a guy who is absolutely red hot, the best player in the game, go in and get him before he gets hurt?"
Right.
No, I'd be the one to get hurt right now.
Ice cold.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. That has torn hamstring written all.
It did.
Finally, Max, before we get to the fastballs, these were the easy questions. These are the fastballs over here.
I know. I'm ready.
Can you put this, of all of your accomplishments, all of the mountains that you have moved, your incredible career, what are moments like this like, when you get to sit in front of fans who have come this way to hear you speak at the Hall of Fame?
It is so humbling. And when I'm in Boston, I think the thing that I always love is when we have older fans and younger fans, but especially older fans who watch me play. And a lot of times, the fathers or the mothers will always say, "Oh my God, that's Cedric Maxwell," and they'll tell their son or their daughter that. And they'll look at me like, "Who?" And I always say, "Dude, do me a favor." They'll say, "Well, can my son take a picture?" I said, "Yeah, of course." But then right after they say that, I said, I'll tell the son or the daughter, "Do me a favor, take a picture of me and Dad, because Dad's the one that really knows me, or Mom is the one that really knows me." Because I've had cats, dogs, pigeons, all kind of people who are named that. One of the most crazy things before I get started is I had a guy, we were in Oklahoma last year. He comes up to me, he has his son, and he brings him over to me. He says, "Man, I got an incredible story to tell you about my son." I was like, "What's your son?" He said, he told his son to tell me his name. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Cedric Maxwell Jones." I said, "What?" He said, "Yes." So he named his son after me. And that was like the most, I could see Cedric, but Cedric Maxwell Jones. So that was pretty fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, that was pretty humbling when that happened. Yes.
You're a good man, Max. I appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, Cedric Maxwell. So now, like I mentioned, we get to the hard questions. So let's bring them on. I only have 2 requirements of those of you who will ask questions. One, you allow me to continue to hold the microphone. And the second is that you introduce yourself to Max before you ask. So let's get it started, shall we? All right, we'll start with energy. Look at him come in. Energy.
Good, how are you doing? I'm Cameron Gilman, and I would like to ask, who was the player who you trusted most of the ball? Like, if you couldn't have the ball, who's the player who you want to give the ball to?
The player I wanted to have the ball, I wanted me, but I won't be that arrogant. I'd probably say at that time it would have been Larry. because Larry Bird had the ability to make plays. When you have guys who are visionaries, who can see the court, that's why you'd want that guy to have the ball. So I would think in a late situation, I probably want Larry Bird to have it before I'd want anybody else on my team to have it.
I'd agree.
All right.
That's who you were guessing too, right, Cameron? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. All right, great
All
question.
right.
How are you, sir? Good, thanks.
My name's Kenneth Ferry. I was wondering if you had any nicknames while you were playing, and if so, why?
The nickname that I had was Cornbread, and it came from a movie called Cornbread, Earl and Me. Jamal Wilkes played a guy in it, and this had to be 1972, 73, something like that. And Larry Fishburne was in the movie, the guy who did The Matrix. He was in it, and I saw him about 5 years ago walking down the street of Boston, and I told him about this, and he said, man, I was 5 years, he said I was 8 years old when I actually did this movie, so that's how I got to be that nickname.
That's a cool nickname.
All right, thank you.
It's great, right? Yeah. One of the great NBA nicknames of all time, Cornbread. I love that. College teammate started?
College teammate started that, yeah.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. My name is Kendall Stirrup, and I would like to ask, do you coach any kids in basketball?
Ooh, that was pretty good. I didn't see that one. Do I coach any kids in basketball?
Yes.
I did. I coached a little bit. I have 2 sons that play, and if there's any fathers out here who play against their sons, always beat them now because they're going to beat you later. One of the things I talked to Kyrie Irving about this, and I was our Celtic player. And last year in the broadcast, I said, Kyrie, I asked my broadcast partner, I said, Sean, I have a question to ask Kyrie that he's never heard. He said, you don't have any kind of question to ask Kyrie he's never heard before. I said, yes, I do. I said, Kyrie, how was it the first time you beat your father playing? And Kyrie, he just bubbled up. He said, oh my God, it was the best I've ever felt. He said, I beat my father. I beat him 12-0. It was the first time I beat him. I started crying. I felt like I won the championship. So you fathers out there, beat your kids. I'm not beat them, okay? But beat your kids in the game. Don't let them win. I mean, because once they beat you, you ain't gonna never beat them again. So whatever it is, golf, tennis, whatever it is, play them as hard as you can, because nothing is gonna be given to any of these young men or young ladies that are playing the game. So you have to be able to be as physical, and even if your wife is there saying, don't do my son or don't do my daughter like that, you just laugh at her, all right? Because that's how those kids are gonna get better. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
My wife is watching in South Carolina right now. Honey, I've been given permission by
Yep.
Max.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Good. My name is Mario Alvarez, and I have a question. When you were playing, did you ever have a favorite person on the Celtics?
My favorite player on the Celtics I played with was Robert Parrish.
Okay.
And I love Robert Parrish because we're both from the South. He was from Louisiana, and they called him, and his nickname turned out to be the Chief. And he got that nickname because I was watching a movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and they had the big Indian guy in there, and his name was Chief, and he talked real low. So I gave Robert Parrish that nickname, and I never got any money for it, but that's how Robert Parrish got that nickname, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you, young man.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. Come on out. How are you?
Hi, my name is Debbie Lazinski, and I'm wondering how you feel about the way the pace of the game has changed over the years, since like how people played in the 80s to how they're playing now, and just how you feel about that.
Debbie, you look like you're a real player. Do you play the game?
For a little bit in high school.
Okay. The pace of the game has changed. The game now is about shooting three-pointers. The game is about defending. If you are a 7-foot-tall guy in the NBA now, you're almost penalized unless you are extremely athletic. You think about the guys right now that are in the league, like Anthony Davis, 7 feet tall, runs the floor, shoots the basket. He can shoot it from the outside, go inside. The game has changed so much now that there was a guy who played maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, Roy Hibbert, who was a pretty good player. But the game, I watched it overnight change from his skill set to a different skill set. So if you can't guard guys out on the floor, if you can't shoot the three-pointer, the game now is almost not, I don't even recognize it now, because I think about Kevin Durant. I was talking to him one day, and I'm actually talking to him. I was like, well, he can't be that tall. And I'm looking, and Kevin Durant really is like 7 feet tall, but he handles the ball like a guy who is 6'5". So the game has changed in such a way now that you have to be mobile, you have to be out on the floor, you have to be able to shoot, you have to be able to defend. So that's how the game has changed. The mental approach is pretty much the same, but the way physically it's playing is different.
Thank you.
All right.
Excellent question, Debbie. Thank you. We'll bring in the closer here. Our closer looks pretty intimidating.
I am Victor from the Netherlands. Did you ever, maybe early or very late in your career, consider playing in Europe?
I went to Europe. I went to Europe my last year after I finished in the NBA, and I was so bad that they just sent me home. That was that's pretty much how it went, because I ended up going to Italy and played for about a week. I was up there for about a week. I was homesick. I wanted to come home. They wanted me to come home. So that was the last time I actually played. I was over there with an Italian team. And what really was frustrating about it was my only language is pretty much English. And I was so frustrated that nobody spoke English. So I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to watch the CBS Evening News. And I was like, one day on television came Star Trek. And I was like, oh my God, the Star Trek is coming on. I was in Italy. I was like, oh, this ought to be good. The next thing I know, I heard the guy say, Senor Spock. I was like, oh. so I was just really frustrated. And so no, I never really played in Italy or played in that place.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Victor. Ladies and gentlemen, one final round of applause for Cedric Maxwell.